So South Korea's top trade negotiator is now back in Seoul after trade talks with the United States. But tariff concerns still remain. As Seoul works to resolve tariff hike threats from the United States, top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. also met in Washington, D.C. to address security and trade issues. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Millard, Assistant Professor of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Millard, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, South Korean Trade Minister has now returned home, but is facing criticism that he came back empty-handed. And tariff issues were also discussed when South Korea's Foreign Minister Hyun met his U.S. counterpart in Washington. How do you think the tariff negotiations will play out from now on?
So these tariff negotiations, they seem to be never-ending. But what's very important to remember is these tariffs, if you go back to the start of Donald Trump's second term in office, this was his main foreign policy tool. This was the main tool he used to really influence countries all over the world to trade more with the US. Now, as we've seen over time, as countries have got more used to these tariff sort of tactics, they're pushing back a little bit. Now also is a very big question mark looming over the legality of these tariffs. So right now, the biggest problem for the US and for other countries like South Korea is these tariffs are creating a lot of uncertainty. So what we really need to sort out first, and this needs to be done in the United States through the Supreme Court, make a decision on the legality of these tariffs. So I think it's a very good position for South Korea not to be rushing into any decisions, not to be capitulating, not to be giving into the American pressure, to sit back, wait for another 2 or 3 weeks. If the Supreme Court makes that final decision, then we can continue on with the negotiations. So I think right now there's definitely uncertainty for the American economy, the American government, the Federal Reserve. They need some more certainty to make their rates. But also for South Korean companies, we need to really get some final decisions before moving ahead.
I see. And the Trump administration has been blaming Seoul's legislature for not implementing a deal struck last year. But some analysts do say that other factors may be at play, like investigations involving Coupang or the parliament's push to pass the Online Platform Act. What's your take on this?
So again, I think all of these are going to come into play in some way, but definitely the main problem, the main issue for the Americans is they signed this deal a few months ago, but the South Koreans, they still haven't ratified this special act. So this is what the Americans want to push for. And this sort of links in with American domestic policies, because right now, Donald Trump, the Trump administration, they look for these photo opportunities where they can bring these achievements, these economic achievements back to America, show the American people, we are achieving this on the economy. We're bringing in $350 billion worth of investment from South Korea. So when the South Koreans don't fully ratify this sort of takes the shine off the American achievements. So they will want to be pushing this issue, but of course, they'll be pressuring South Korea and they'll be using any sort of leverage they can to really increase the pressure. So the digital regulations that the South Koreans are sort of trying to enact, the Americans, they were very quick through the American embassy in Seoul to criticize these regulations and say, this is going to really damage a lot of American companies doing business in Korea. So again, all of it adds up, but very much the main issue is the American government wants this deal, wants this negotiation finished so they can show to their domestic supporters the achievements they made.
All right, and beyond trade issues, the foreign ministers of South Korea and the U.S. also talked about ways to implement agreements outlined in the joint summit fact sheet signed by President Ian Trump late last year. Can we expect the two sides to speed up cooperation on projects like building nuclear power submarines?
It's very possible. So what we've seen is over the past sort of 6-9 months, we've definitely seen some ups and downs in the relationship, in the negotiations between the Trump administration and the Lee administration. But what this shows us is that even though there is a little bit of tension, the South Korea-US relationship, it's still very strong. They're still close partners. And we have sort of the trade issues, the tariff negotiations are going, but separately, we have a very strong security partnership between the two, also including Japan as well. So even though trade and tariff negotiations may be going a little bit slower, it's very likely that on those security issues, so for example, nuclear-powered submarines, nuclear fuel enrichment in South Korea, and so on, we're likely to see maybe not accelerated cooperation, but definitely a much faster momentum. They'll keep that security cooperation going because really, for South Korea, America, and also for Japan, maintaining this security cooperation is very much a win-win.
Right, and the State Department also said the two sides also talked about denuclearization of North Korea, and they also highlighted the importance of trilateral cooperation with Japan. There are concerns that the Trump administration's focus is sort of shifting away from North Korea more toward homeland security. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, without doubt, we've definitely seen over the past few months, especially, that America, its focus very much is on the Western Hemisphere. So we've seen the attacks on lots of boats in the Caribbean Sea. We've seen attack on Venezuela, talks of Greenland and so on. So very much the public shift, the visual shift in foreign policy is towards the Western Hemisphere, which fits in very nicely with the Trump administration's Make America Great Again policies, America First policies. However, both America and also South Korea, there has not been any official change in policy towards North Korea. There's been nothing said about that. And also, if we look at the Americans' foreign policy, even though the focus has been more on the Western Hemisphere, they are still involved in Gaza. They have been involved in Yemen, Syria. It's very much involved in Iran. So it's not completely only Western Hemisphere, but definitely the visual shift is more to that sort of region. The only sort of area we'd have to be concerned about is in the future, if the Donald Trump administration decides to have a significant withdrawal of troops from South Korea, then we could say there would be a significant shift in policy. But right now, South Korea, America, the official policies remain on denuclearization of North Korea.
I see. I guess it's pretty hard to tell as of now. All right, Professor Millard, thank you so much for your time this morning. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.